white-headed woodpecker. Quiet, given to prying more than pecking, an odd member of the family, lives only in the high pine forests of the western mountains like the Cascades, where I spent an afternoon almost a decade ago in Roslyn, Washington, looking for what I could find of Black people who'd migrated from the South almost a century and a quarter prior. The white-headed woodpecker doesn't migrate, and so is found in its home range year-round when it can be found. Roslyn, founded as a coal mining town, drew miners from all over Europe, as far away as Croatia, across the ocean, with opportunities. With their hammering and drilling to extract a living, woodpeckers could be considered arboreal miners. A habitat, a home range, is where one can feed and house oneself, meet the requirements of life, and propagate. In 1888, those miners from many lands, all in Roslyn, came together to go on strike against the mine management. And so, from southern states, a few hundred Black miners were recruited with the promise of opportunities in Roslyn, many with families in tow to break the strike. They faced resentment and armed resistance, left in the dark until their arrival, unwitting scabs, that healing that happens after lacerations or abrasions. Things settled down as they do sometimes, and eventually blacks and whites entered a union as equals. Black, save for a white face and crown and a sliver of white on its wings that flares to a crescent when they spread for flight. The white-headed woodpecker is a study in stark contrasts. Males have a patch of red feathers on the back of their crowns, and I can't help but see blood.
Oh my God. Wow. I love what you did there with the language and words of like kind of like what I call it mirroring, like, with the black and white and then with the black and white in a different way. That was just phenomenal. This is
Yeah.
why your book was sold out at AWP. I remember I tried it.
Yeah.
That was so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So that's some of the work I'm doing. I'm like thinking about people in the past and what their lives were and how their lives reflect, impact, resonate with mine,
Mhm.
right? Um, so I was like looking into that space, and there are Black people who go back there because their ancestors moved there in the 1880s, and they're like it's home, and so there's still like kind of a homecoming for Black folk who grew up there and whose family who like lived there for generations. It's a little town that's like not much going on anymore, but like there was at one point those 400 folks and their families, with the largest Black population west of the Mississippi, I think it was. Um, yeah,
Um, it makes me think about when I'm thinking about your work now. You do a lot of research
yeah.
really to like illuminate the subject matter. Can you talk a little bit about like researching for poetic sake? Because like normally when we think about poetry, we don't think that research goes into it.
Yeah. Um, you know, I think like there are these people who are sort of my forebears, and one in particular, like Marilyn Nelson, like she's incredible. And like her book Carve Her Life, but also her book Home Place, and like thinking about her family and Tuskegee Airmen, all of these things kind of influence the way I think about research and what you can do with, expanding your knowledge base, right? That's what we're doing when we research. Um, and I remember I saw her, she gave a reading and a talk, and she was like, poets were great because, like, one of the things that's cool about us is that we get to be like experts on something. We're writing a poem, like, you get to do all this research and we get to be experts for a little bit, you
Yeah.
know, just enough to write a poem, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we hang on to some of those things.
Mhm.
Um, and so, like, I'm trying to find um, the I'm looking for texture, like the language, also like some detail that's going to be resonant when I'm researching. Um, I'm trying to hold to facts, but facts are slippery, because the archive is slippery. The archive is what someone's decided, is important. Um, and so there's a short story in here that sort of wrestles with that tension, like what's kept and what's not. Um, but it's good for me to sort of try to find as much as I can, and to figure out what I can bring to the page. Um, so it's like this for me, it's like an act of preservation. So it's active, like, excavation is that's the research, and then the writing is I'm trying to preserve some things for my reader and for myself, whoever my reader might be. Um, and part of the research is also not just in the archive, it's going to places. So like my going to Roslyn helped me think about this poem with the white-headed woodpecker.
Mhm.
Um, and there's parts of that poem that in drafting that didn't make it to the page. Um, that day of like wandering around Roslyn, I ended up in a cemetery. And it was a very segregated cemetery because there were people from all over the world, and there was like the Croatian section, the Italian section, and all these other, like, different sections. Little cemetery, at the edge of this little town, and and I was like thinking about how the men that were buried, the people that were buried there, the men that were buried there, um, like this sort of self-segregation in the cemetery was kind of maybe as close as they were going to get back to their home countries in some ways. Um, and it made me think about how I feel very distant from where I grew up and where I might be buried and how I might be in community and the afterlife. All of these things were like at one point a part of this poem that ended up not fitting in the poem. Because I think as you were saying, what I'm doing with the black and white, I'm doing this juxtaposition between the woodpecker and the people. And I think at the core of the poem is like thinking about like what it is that we need as beings in the world, like human beings and also other than human beings. And so for me, it's like this woodpecker and the miners are just trying to get by. And there can be things that get in the way of that. In the instance with the miners, it was, capitalism and the mine management who was squeezing them so they had to go on strike. And their answer for these guys going on strike is let's bring some black people in and put them to work, give them an opportunity. Um, but at base, it's like it is about like where can we live and how can we live? You know, how do we
One
meet those